Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. This is the post-fight review for the Alexander Povetkin and Hughie Fury fight, with the Russian scoring a unanimous decision. All three of the judges scoring at 117-111 for Alexander Povetkin. A bit wider than I had it on my card. There were a number of close rounds, but this was the problem for Hughie Fury. He wasn't scoring any really decisive rounds where he could go, well, that's a clear Hughie Fury round. On my card, it was kind of like I had to go either way on some of those ones. Whereas there were maybe 4 or 5 rounds where Povetkin landed the more clean, effective shots. He was the aggressor, the ring general. There are those rounds where he was just landing a bit more, but it was the eye-catching work, and I was like, yeah, that was a Povetkin round. So Hughie Fury drops his third fight at world level, and we'll talk about his stock within the heavyweight division. Where is it now? But first, I want to talk about the fight first, because this was a fight that Hughie Fury probably could have won, but he didn't really maximize his natural advantages. He knew what Povetkin was going to do. The shorter man was going to look to work his way on the inside and let his left hook go and overhand right. It's exactly what we saw, but we didn't really see Hughie Fury have a plan to combat that. He didn't really seem to do much. He allowing Povetkin to get on the inside quite often in the fight, and he just sort of gave up the ground. And Povetkin, make no mistake, he wasn't vintage Povetkin in this one. It wasn't a fantastic performance by Povetkin, but it was a workman-like. He did enough to win. There were a few, eye-catching shots throughout the fight, but certainly from about round 3 onwards, he was slowing down, breathing heavily out of his mouth. And the second half of the fight, it looked like Hughie Fury would start to step it up and take over, but it just never really happened. He let the smaller man dictate the action, and Fury just didn't seem to have a plan to combat him. And part of the problem was he wasn't really using his jab enough. There just wasn't enough activity. The jab started well for Fury early in the fight, but he just wasn't consistent enough with it. He wasn't doing enough to get Povetkin's respect, and he was allowing a lot of these close rounds, I think, for Povetkin to nick them. And that's why I think, a lot of cards that I've seen, say, on Twitter, had Povetkin winning, but maybe the margin wasn't as wide. So that was 117-111. So what is that, like 9 rounds to 3? Something like that. A lot of close action, and this is Hughie Fury's problem. Wasn't doing enough to really win some clear rounds for himself. And even Fury himself, he wasn't really letting his right hand go. You sort of knew what he wanted to do and was looking to do, but he just couldn't do it often enough. So the win there was there for Hughie Fury if he had the right game plan, was able to execute it. And this version of Povetkin was very beatable. But Hughie Fury just couldn't do enough. There was a number of rounds between about round 7 and round 10 where Hughie Fury could have really done a lot more. And probably if he had of, it would have been a much closer fight on the scorecards. Yeah, so I don't know what to say in terms of Hughie Fury and why he wasn't, committing to the jab enough, why he wasn't working the body. Povetkin was clearly slowing down in that one, but Fury just, one-off jabs here, one-off right hands, looking to trade in spots, but not busy enough, not really working Povetkin to the body, trying to slow him down, and the body shots were there for him if he wanted it, but he just didn't take the opportunity. And he was caught a number of times with the overhand right, and it did buzz him a couple of times, but he didn't really look in trouble to any extent at any point of the fight, but he didn't really empty the tank either. He sort of went the 12 rounds comfortably enough with Povetkin. It kind of felt at spots like it was sparring. It promised much, but really this fight delivered little. I said ahead of the fight it sort of had the potential to be a bit of a stinker, or it could be a bit of a barn burner, and at different points it looked like it could be either one, but it kind of ended up being something in the middle. It didn't really catch fire, wasn't a terrible watch for the most part, but it just didn't deliver on the action front, and Fury just not busy enough. For Povetkin, couple of days out from his 40th birthday, another, decent win for him. He did enough to win this one. He obviously got the close rounds in the judges' cards. They obviously liked the aggression from Povetkin. There were the more cleaner, eye-catching work from him, but it wasn't a vintage Povetkin by any stretch, as I've mentioned. And I think he's going to have to sort of plot his path in the heavyweight division very carefully now, because he's already said that he's only around for another 1 or 2 fights, and he's just had one of these ones against Hughie Fury, which always struck me as a strange fight. But clearly, on the strength of what I saw there, yeah, he's definitely beatable. One of the more elite heavyweights would probably have a lot more success than Hughie Fury, who just didn't seem to know what he wanted to do. As I've said in the lead up to this, betwixt and between on how he wants to fight. He was defensive at spots and that, but then tried to trade with Povetkin, but just wouldn't let his hands go enough. So I don't know where Hughie Fury goes from now, because obviously 3 losses at world level, and he didn't exactly look like the sort of fighter that you can kind of go, yeah, he's going to get to world level. And there's the old sort of, oh, he's only 24, but at what point are they going to do a rebuild him properly if they're going to maximize his talents and try to transition him into someone who's a bit more offensively aggressive? If he's going to do that, he's got to let his hands go. He's got to get some practice against some of these lower tier opposition. They keep rushing him from 1 or 2 fights back up to world level, and he's taken 3 losses in a row now. And I don't want to hear Hughie Fury and his team say he had bad luck in this fight, because that's what they said about his other losses, where, you know, that sort of skirts over some of the main issues with Fury. He's not doing enough. He's not busy enough. He's not landing a lot of clean, effective punches. He's not a big puncher, but he's not using his skills to his full extent either. I know there will be a lot of people saying they don't want to see Hughie Fury again. I think he will come again, but I think maybe they need to actually just, you know, take their time with the rebuild. And who next for Povetkin? Well, it's an interesting question, because obviously, you know, if he's only got 1 fight left, maybe 2 max, he's going to want to face someone on a high-profile card, someone that he can really have a good challenge against and get a half-decent payday too. I wouldn't want to see Povetkin sort of dropping down to Hughie Fury level again. If he is only around for 1 or 2 more fights, let him have someone in the top 10 or 15. He may lose that. He looks good for the first 2 or 3 rounds, looks sharp, but after that, he does slow down, is a little bit plodding at times, and is certainly beatable. But yeah, what do you make of this fight? It promised much, but delivered little for me. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.